So we talked on stream before about Tulip Siddiq and the potential that she might be engaging in a teensy-weensy little bit of corruption, maybe, given her relationship to Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh and their Awami League party, which, it's pretty big. Given that she was a minister who literally had to deal with corruption as her under position in the treasury, to do with the city specifically, maybe being a wee bit corrupt yourself, maybe that's a bad look. And there's been a lot of furore around the fact that there's been these questions asked of her dealings with the Awami League and properties that she's been handed to free of charge and places that she's been renting. It's looked pretty grim for Tulip Siddiq. Now, I commented on stream specifically that the fact that she's been given so much benefit of the doubt, despite how dodgy this all looks from Keir Starmer and the Politburo, shows how close she is to the inner ring, which I find quite funny, because if you compare that to how Lou Hague was treated for something far less serious, which was a spent conviction for accidentally reporting a mobile phone as lost when it wasn't in 2014, as if that's relevant in 2024, she got removed instantaneously because she's slightly too left-wing for the Starmer Politburo, so she got no benefit of any doubt whatsoever. Yet the Tulip Siddiq saga has been rumbling on for days and days and days and days and days. So at no point has she been called into question in her position from Keir Starmer. But this has come to a head today where she's resigned. And I think she's basically resigned because she's been asked to by Keir Starmer because it looks bad. I don't think they want her to resign because she's someone who they don't want in the cabinet. I think she's been asked to resign because they just want the news to stop, which is quite funny to me. They probably could have gotten away with the news cycle stopping about Lou Hague because no one actually really cares about her fraud conviction. People really genuinely cared about the alleged corruption of Tulip Siddiq. And she had full confidence day after day after day, despite the fact that the news was way worse for them than Lou Hague. And it shows you the dichotomy between what happens if you're on the left or the right of the Labour Party and how you get treated by this current leadership. Siddiq, who was the City and Anti-Corruption Minister, stepped aside after investigation by Laurie Magnus, the advisor on ministerial standards, into her use of properties given to herself and family by allies of the regime of Sheikh Hasina. She was not deemed by Magnus to have broken any rules over her use of the homes, and he found no evidence to suggest that any of Siddiq's assets were derived from anything other than legitimate means. The inquiry also looked into her presence at the signing of a 2013 nuclear deal between her aunt and Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The advisor accepted her explanation that she had only been there as socialist and as a tourist. However, Magnus also said that a lack of records and a lapse of time has meant that he had not been able to obtain comprehensive comfort in relation to all the UK property-related matters referred to in the media. After Magnus submitted his conclusions, she resigned on Tuesday evening, saying she had fully declared all her financial interests and relationships, but it was clear that the situation had become a distraction for the government. It is the second resignation of a senior woman from Starmer's government over an ethics issue after Lou Hague quit as Transport Secretary last year for correction for fraud. Again, a spent conviction. It was completely wiped away at this point. It was a spent conviction from 10 years before, and she was forced to resign immediately. I wonder how the press got hold of that information. Especially after it happened suspiciously quickly after she had criticised P&O. Siddiq is also under investigation by authorities in Bangladesh over alleged corruption linked to her aunt's collapsed regime, which she totally refutes. Siddiq will be replaced as City Minister by Emma Reynolds, a Department for Work and Pensions Minister who previously worked for the City UK, the Financial Services Industry Group. Okay. Financial Services Industry Group is that's a bit of a euphemism, really, for being a lobbyist for the big city, right? Being a lobbyist for the financial sector, in the Labour Party, the party of the trade unions and the working person. It's a very working person to be a financial sector lobbyist, isn't it? It was previously reported by Bloomberg in December that Reynolds had been part of a lobbying campaign while at the City UK to exempt China from the strictest level of reporting requirements for a new registration regime for agents of foreign influence, a scheme that has not been brought forward so far by Labour. Very interesting, isn't it? How that was in December that Bloomberg reported that Reynolds had been part of a lobbying campaign, whereas if you look, before the election, Novara Media were clearly calling out her connections to the lobbying industry before the election. This is an article from the 13th of June 2024 by Polly Smythe, a Labour movement correspondent at Novara Media. This has been something that we have known for a while. This is somebody who's in the pocket of lobbyists. And it clearly states, MP for Wolverhampton North East from 2010 until 2019, when she lost her seat, Reynolds has spent the last few years as the managing director of the lobby group The City UK. She's overseen public affairs as well as policy and economic research for the organisation, which describes itself as an industry-led body representing UK-based financial and related professional services. Well, there you go. It's weird how, before the election, Novara Media were commenting on all of these different people with loads of really cushy relationships with the lobbying sector, plenty of them, 31 in total, and no one seemed to care in the run-up to the election. The other media, the mainstream media, didn't bother commenting at any point over the potential conflict of interest of having somebody with so many links to lobbying industries being a member of the Labour government, because of course the mainstream media think this is business as usual. They're so used to it being business as usual under the Tories that of course they wouldn't criticise it coming from Labour either. And of course, on top of that, they wouldn't criticise it coming from Labour when what that means is that's another seat that's replacing somebody who can come from a genuine trade union background. That could be somebody who actually has experience of being an actual working person that they claim to represent. But no. It's much more important to have links to the financial sector. Again, the people who she is supposed to be regulating in her position that's replacing Tulip Siddiq. Do I not smell? Do I not sniff a little bit of a conflict of interest? Potentially maybe a tiny weeny conflict of interest between Emma Reynolds' position as a lobbyist for the city and then being the person who was supposed to be regulating the city and corruption within it as a member of government. Trade union background in the Labour Party? Fuck off, peasant. And what's a shame is there's been a couple of the new intake. They've been pretty good. Like Annalise Midgley is pretty good. Antonia Bant's been pretty good in the select committees questioning the bosses of companies, right? There's not all of the 2024 intake that are bad, but there's so many of them. We just got so many fingers in so many lobbying sector pies, and it's just treated as if it's business as usual. There's no scrutiny placed on this whatsoever, and they could sail through the election being essentially gifted a position in government because of the way in which the mainstream media failed to report on the interests of the Labour Party. And then we've got someone resigning over potential corruption issues, only to be replaced by somebody with a massive conflict of interest. Adults in the room, though. Are we all enjoying the adults in the room? Are we all enjoying the high-quality candidate adults in the room? No Trotskyists or student politics at all to be seen right now. No, nothing like that at all. Let's watch a video about the whole situation.
Will you resign?
It took a while, but eventually the answer was yes. Tulip Siddiq was notable by her absence this afternoon, the only Treasury Minister not to accompany the Chancellor when she addressed Parliament today about the tumbling economy, because Tulip Siddiq's own career was in freefall. By late afternoon, the Prime Minister's friend, neighbouring MP and member of his government resigned.
Ah, that's why. They're in neighbouring constituencies and they're friends. Well, that's what's different between her and Lou Haig, isn't it?
It's a resignation some have been calling for weeks.
Do you have full confidence in her?
Tulip Siddiq has acted entirely properly by referring herself to the independent advisor, as she's now done.
More than a decade ago, pre-MP life, Tulip Siddiq and her aunt Sheikh Hasina, and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Miss Siddiq was there, she says, to see her family because Aunt Sheikh Hasina was the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Last August, Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule ended after student-led protests. Her party, the Awami League, has been accused by political rivals and human rights groups of rigging elections and carrying out extrajudicial killings. None of which is anything to do with Tulip Siddiq, but this central London flat is. It was bought in 2001 by a property developer linked to the Awami League and then given, cash-free, to Tulip Siddiq in 2004.
Again, it was gifted to the Awami League by somebody who they'd given money to before, right? Money exchanged hands and then the flat exchanged hands, but there was nothing to do with those two things at all.
Last month, Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission began investigating claims Sheikh Hasina's family embezzled billions from the nation. Tulip Siddiq was named in the Bangladeshi investigation, and 8 days ago, after a string of adverse headlines, Ms Siddiq referred herself to the UK government independent advisor on ethics. In her letter to Sir Keir Starmer today, Tulip Siddiq says, "It is clear that continuing in my role as Economic Secretary to the Treasury is likely to be a distraction from the work of the government." But she makes clear the Prime Minister's independent advisor on ministerial standards has confirmed that I have not breached the ministerial code. In Sir Keir's reply, he reiterates, "I also want to be clear that Sir Laurie Magnus, as independent advisor, has assured me he found no breach of the ministerial code and no evidence of financial improprieties on your part." The independent advisor's letter, though, contains a bit more nuance, concluding, "It is regrettable that she was not more alert to the potential reputational risk, both to her and the government arising from her close family's association with Bangladesh. I would not advise that this shortcoming should be taken as a breach of the ministerial code. But you will want to consider her ongoing responsibilities in the light of this.
I think the Prime Minister was far too slow to act in this case. The independent advisers' reports say there are still a number of unanswered questions.
Channel 4 News has been asking Tulip Siddiq about her connections to the former Bangladeshi regime since 2017. Ahmed bin Qasim was detained a year earlier while serving on the legal team of his father, an Islamist opposition party leader in Bangladesh. When she was asked if she would use her connections to seek Mr. Qasim's release, this is how she replied.
Are you aware that I'm a British MP?
I am.
You are.
You're
okay.
also very well
And
connected to the
and
regime.
I'm born in London. Are you implying I'm a Bangladeshi politician?
You
Because
have
I don't think that's the right thing to
you have
imply.
said many times. You've
You need to
said
be very
on a
careful.
blog post. You've
I'm
said
a
on a blog
Labour
post.
MP for Hampstead and Kilburn.
You've
I'm a British
described
member
yourself
of
as a
Parliament.
Sir Keir Starmer has been Prime Minister for just over 6 months, and Tulip Siddiq is the second minister he's lost. The Prime Minister may no longer face questions over Ms Siddiq. He might not be so lucky about
All this playing it down is presumably to pave a way back to the government position in the future. I don't think that's likely, unfortunately. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I say unfortunately, I don't give a shit, but you know what I mean? Like, whether or not you think she's been forced out here or not, the issue, of course, is that if she ever did get appointed to another ministerial position, all of the corruption stuff would immediately come back up again and say, well, if she had to resign then, why is she being appointed now? They would never appoint her again because it would be seen as that her resignation here wasn't serious or that it was just being done for those reasons. So I don't think she'll be back.
questions of his own judgment.
Well, let's hear now from our political editor, Gary Gibbon, who's in Westminster. Gary.
Well, people will be wondering what actually did for Tulip Siddiq. And in his report, Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor on ministerial standards, acknowledges her paperwork was inadequate, the paperwork around those flats that you were just hearing.
They reappointed Suella Braverman like 3 days later and got away with it. Well, I mean, it's the Tories, right? It's okay if you're a Tory. The Tories get away with any old shit. They expect them to be corrupt. There's like a higher standard for non-Tory politicians.
Paul talk about, but he says, that's to be expected with the passage of time. He acknowledges that she misled the Mail on Sunday 2 years ago when they came to her with the story about who actually bought one of the flats for her. And although they were onto something, she turned around and threatened them with legal action at the time. Again, Laurie Magnus says it was inadvertent. She hadn't quite understood who had given her one of these flats. So he's accepting her words at face value, it seems, until that killer paragraph that Paul was talking about at the end of the letter, when he turns around and says, frankly, she should have been, I'm paraphrasing now, he didn't say anything that, frankly, it's a rather opaque letter. She should have been more conscious of the connection she had to a political dynasty, particularly one that has fallen and is under heavy investigation. And that, it seems, is what did for her. Did she actually resign? It's always a question we ask ourselves at these moments. When Lou Haig, the Transport Secretary, resigned, she was told, actually, I think you need to resign. Maybe Keir Starmer, he had a phone call with Tulip Siddiq, had to, quite often ministers need a gentle prod in that direction. Maybe he did that there.
Yeah, I too have been given a free flat and not realised who the 6 or 7 figure gift it was. I think it was 7 figures as well. Not only did she just claim she didn't know, she also claimed that she also made separate claims over who it was that gifted her in the first place when she was asked on 2 separate occasions, right? Her story doesn't even fucking add up over who gave her the flat in the first place. Wouldn't it have been nice if the media took the same approach as they did with the story of Greensill Cameron issue? Yeah, exactly. Like how the Greensill Capital thing didn't be seen as one of the most fundamentally corrupt things in government I think we've ever seen. Just, can you give me free money from the state because you have access to the fucking treasury? From Rishi Sunak to David Cameron. It's so openly corrupt. And that guy got away with it so much, he got appointed a Lord and then became the fucking foreign secretary.
There. Has he treated her differently? Because there were friendly relations between them, particularly earlier in his career. Has he treated her differently from Lou Haig? His allies say absolutely not. That was a very different open and shut case. This was a case that needed to be looked into. Controversy hasn't completely died tonight because the replacement of City Minister Emma Reynolds used to be a lobbyist only a few months ago, trying to help the city get closer, financial industry get closer relations with China. She now has that as one of her responsibilities, and anything to do with China creates headlines, and they are being written in Fleet Street as we speak.
Gary, thanks very much indeed. Well, a short while ago, I spoke to Jonathan Ashworth, who was in the shadow cabinet under Jeremy Corbyn and Sir Keir Starmer, but lost his Leicester South seat in last July's general election. He's now running the think tank Labour Together and asked for his reaction to today's resignation.
Well, I think it is a credit to Tulip that she has resigned this evening, because she did refer herself to the independent advisor on these matters. The advisor found that she hasn't broken the code, but she recognised that she was becoming a distraction. And in the circumstances, she's left the front bench. I think that's the right thing to do. And of course, I think her behaviour is a stark contrast to the behaviour that we saw from various Conservative politicians under.
Either she's done nothing wrong, so she shouldn't leave the front bench, or she has done something wrong, she has acted with impropriety, and therefore she should stand down. Choose a lane, Jonathan. Choose a lane. You can only have one or the other.
The last government.
So she resigned because she thought she was becoming a distraction. You could argue that a distraction is precisely what the government needs at the moment with all its economic woes.
No, and I don't accept your rather mischievous characterisation there. This is a government which is focused on growing the economy. That's the preoccupation of this government. As you know, we've had anemic growth for many years under the Conservatives.
So was the Prime Minister, as the opposition has alleged, protecting his close personal friend and fellow North London MP, Tulip Siddiq?
I don't understand what the opposition are getting at by making that point. The Prime Minister was overseeing due process. Tulip Siddiq had referred herself to the ministerial advisor who was looking into it, and quite rightly waited for the outcome of that inquiry. The ministerial advisor said she hadn't broken the code, but in the circumstances, she thought it was the right decision nonetheless to leave the front bench. I think it's important that the Prime Minister follows due process. Right. And if the Tories think there's something else untoward has happened, rather than spread innuendo, they should just spell it out.
And I think at the end of the day, right, is that I think that there is a very reasonable chance that Tulip Siddiq has done nothing wrong. I think there is plenty of leeway that she may have forgotten, she may not have known, she might have links to the Awami League, but maybe the fact that she was gifted, there's nothing unproprietary going on here. There is nothing impure in how this was done in the first place, right? I'm willing to entertain that might be the case. I'm willing to entertain it. What this does show everybody, though, is that to try and claim that the people running the Labour right at the moment, the people running the Labour Party at the moment who are from the Labour right, when they said that they were going to take Labour from being a party of protest to a party of power, they were getting rid of the student politicians and becoming the adults in the room, that they were going to try and make Labour the new natural party of government by building a broad coalition to be able to put them into government again and again and again. If these claims had any merit to them whatsoever, maybe, just maybe, you might want to, at any point before getting into government, have a look into your own ministers' pasts, have a look and see whether they might have done anything that could be seen as being corrupt, or have any links to any other foreign regimes before appointing them to a position in your cabinet dealing with corruption. Just a thought that maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe it's not a good idea as a political party to appoint people with dubious connections, whether they are corrupt or not. I'm willing to entertain the idea that maybe they aren't corrupt and this is all a big hoo-ha over nothing. But it at least looks corrupt. At least it has corrupt optics. Maybe the appointing of this person to this position was a stupid idea in the first place and shows you the current government is totally unserious, and they appoint people who they believe are their friends from their wing of the party, from their faction, or from neighbouring seats and close personal friends, and they're not doing things either based on merit or indeed based upon whether or not these are even suited to the job for the actual running of the job, or indeed optically for the electorate. Just a tiny thought, just one thing maybe, just maybe worth considering for the adults in the room, quote unquote.
Not so long ago, the Prime Minister said he had complete confidence in Tulip Siddiq. Does he still have confidence in Tulip Siddiq, even though she's done the honourable and right thing to resign?
Well, inasmuch he has confidence in her to continue as a Member of Parliament, of course, and he recognises that the ministerial code has not been broken.
The fact that the pound, is the worst performing major currency this week, the fact that our borrowing costs are at a 16-year high, the fact that, business confidence has drooped, dramatically in recent months. These are not global problems. These are the problems, of the government's making, aren't they?
Well, the dollar is strengthened, which has an impact on currencies across the world. There is turbulence in the bond market. Yields are high in the US as well. It was only 6 months ago that this government were elected, and they found a hole in the public finances. They had to make tough decisions to stabilise the public finances.
To fix the foundations, to deal with the crash of the mini budget, they'll take no lectures from the Conservative Party.
I wonder what you make of this poll that was published yesterday. It's the first YouGov poll since the elections, and it has the following results. Labour on 26%, right?
To change Britain, we must change ourselves. We need to clean up politics. No more VIP fast lanes, no more kickbacks for colleagues, no more revolving doors between government and the companies they regulate. I will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on cronyism. Keir Starmer during the campaign trail. Well, that lasted fucking long, didn't it? Literally, immediately doing kickbacks for friends and a revolving door between government and the companies they regulate. Well, not necessarily the companies, but someone who worked for a lobbying firm for the companies that they're supposed to be regulating in the form of Emma Reynolds. Like, it's just brazen lies and mistruths and misdirections and U-turns day after day after day from Keir Starmer. Literally just a completely different man from the campaign trail. Totally different.
That's pretty low for a party in government. Reform on 25%, 1% behind you.
For the fact that Nigel Farage over Christmas, for example, said he wanted to introduce charging into the National Health Service. I don't believe your viewers in Barnsley, Bolsover or Bolton want to be charged to go to their local hospital.
I do enjoy their transparency when they get Ashworth on to represent the government. They have no shame that being in the government and being in Labour together is exactly the same thing. Well, yeah, exactly. Like, they're just open. Just fuck it. Get Tony Blair. Get Tony Blair on to do your interviews for you. He's basically in the same position as Jonathan Ashworth is at this point. Fuck it. If it's just people who are connected to the top brass, get Will Jessuis. Get Will Jessuis on camera as well. Fuck it.
But why do you think that reform has done so well? I mean, in terms of the Tories and in terms of Labour, 1 percentage point behind the party in government. This Reform UK didn't exist until a few years ago.
Well, that's why Labour politicians, have got to start spelling out the implications of reform and what it would mean if we had a Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage coalition of chaos government.
Jonathan Ashworth, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I mean, I do think he's right about the problems of reform. People don't want to pay for the NHS, but they're all going to have to force we use the fucking private healthcare under this current Labour government anyway. So, hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.